Marcus Cole was sitting in his small apartment on Earth when the message arrived. He was eating cheap noodles and watching the rain fall outside his window. Life had not been kind to Marcus. He worked long hours at the factory, earned little money, and had no family left. At least, that was what he believed. The message came from a law office on Kepler Station, a mining colony far away in deep space. Marcus read it 3 times before he understood what it said. His uncle David had died. Marcus barely remembered the man. David had left Earth when Marcus was just a child, and no one in the family ever spoke about him again. Now, decades later, this stranger had left everything to Marcus. Everything turned out to be a spaceship. Marcus used his entire savings to buy a ticket to Kepler Station. The journey took 2 weeks on a crowded transport ship. He slept in a tiny cabin and ate terrible food. But he did not complain. For the first time in years, Marcus felt something like hope. A spaceship meant freedom. It meant escape from his boring life. It meant possibilities. Kepler Station was an ugly place. It floated in the darkness of space like a metal spire, with long docking arms reaching out in every direction. The air inside smelled like rust and sweat. Miners walked through the corridors with tired eyes and dirty clothes. This was a place where people came to work, not to live. The lawyer was a thin woman named Betty. She had gray hair and a face that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. She handed Marcus a datapad with all the paperwork. "Your uncle lived alone for 40 years, Betty said. He never married, never had children. He kept to himself and paid his docking fees on time. That is all anyone here knew about him. What about the ship?" Marcus asked. Betty shrugged. "It is old, very old. I am surprised it still holds air. You will find it in Docking Bay 47, the salvage yard." Marcus thanked her and left. He followed the signs through the station until he reached the salvage yard. This was where old ships came to die. Broken hulls sat in rows like metal corpses. Some had been stripped for parts. Others simply waited for someone to care. Docking Bay 47 held a single ship. It was a cargo freighter, maybe 60 meters long. The hull was covered in rust and old paint that had started to peel away. The name on the side said The Drifter in faded letters. Marcus stood there for a long time, just looking at it. This was his inheritance, this pile of rust. He walked up the boarding ramp and stepped inside. The interior was dark and dusty. Emergency lights flickered in the ceiling. The air smelled like old oil and something else Marcus could not identify. He moved slowly through the corridor, running his hand along the wall. The metal was cold under his fingers. The cargo bay was large and mostly empty. Old crates sat in one corner, covered in dust. Tools hung on the walls, forgotten for years. And in the center of the room stood something Marcus did not expect. A robot. It was old, maybe as old as the ship itself. Its body was shaped like a human, but taller and made entirely of metal. The chest plate was dented in several places. One arm had been repaired with parts that did not quite match. A single optical sensor glowed faint blue in its head, flickering like a candle in the wind. The robot turned to face Marcus. Gears clicked and whirred inside its body. "Welcome, new owner," it said. The voice was mechanical and crackling, like an old radio. "I am K7. I served your Uncle David for 43 years. I will now serve you." Marcus circled the robot slowly. He had seen service robots before, but nothing this old. K7 looked like it belonged in a museum, not on a working ship. "You still function?" Marcus asked. "I am functional," K7 replied. "That is what matters." Marcus was not sure he agreed, but he decided to keep the robot for now. He needed all the help he could get. Over the next few days, Marcus explored every corner of the drifter. The ship was in bad condition, but not hopeless. The engine still worked, though it made strange noises. The life support systems needed new filters. The navigation computer was outdated by at least 30 years. But the basic structure was solid. With enough work and money, Marcus could make this ship fly again. K-7 followed him everywhere. The robot knew every system on the ship, every wire and every pipe. It answered Marcus's questions patiently, explaining things in simple terms. Marcus began to appreciate the old machine, even if it was strange to have a robot watching him all the time. One night, Marcus sat in the captain's chair on the bridge. The viewport showed the darkness of space and the distant lights of the station. He thought about his uncle David, alone on this ship for 40 years. What had the man been doing out here? Why had he left Earth and never returned? K-7, Marcus said. What kind of man was my uncle? The robot stood in the corner, motionless. Its optical sensor flickered. He was a quiet man, K-7 said. He did not speak often, but he was kind. He repaired my systems when I was damaged. He talked to me when he was lonely. He trusted me with his secrets. What secrets? K-7 did not answer immediately. The silence stretched for several seconds. Your uncle believed in things, K-7 finally said. He believed humanity was meant for something greater. He spent his life searching for proof. Could he find it? Again, K-7 paused. I cannot answer that question. Not yet, Marcus frowned. Why not? Because I made a promise. And I always keep my promises. Marcus wanted to press harder, but something in the robot's voice made him stop. There was weight in those words. K-7 was hiding something, but Marcus sensed that pushing too hard would not help. He would learn the truth eventually. He had time. Marcus leaned back in the captain's chair and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, his uncle had found something worth hiding, something worth protecting for 40 years. Marcus was going to find out what it was. But first, he had a ship to repair. He stood up and walked toward the engine room, K-7 following close behind. The work would be hard, but Marcus did not mind. For the first time in his life, he had a purpose. The drifter was his now. And together, they were going to fly. 2 months passed on Kepler Station. Marcus worked every day on the drifter, fixing broken systems and replacing old parts. He spent most of his savings on equipment and supplies. Some nights, he was so tired that he fell asleep in the engine room, covered in grease and dirt. But slowly, the old ship came back to life. K-7 was always there, helping with every task. The robot never complained, never got tired, never asked for rest. It worked through the night while Marcus slept. It remembered things that Marcus forgot. It knew solutions to problems that Marcus had never seen before. Without K-7, the repairs would have taken years. With the robot's help, they took weeks. But Marcus began to notice strange things about K-7. It started small. Sometimes K-7 would stop in the middle of a task and stand completely still. Its optical sensor would go dark, and the robot would not respond to questions. These moments lasted only a few minutes, but they happened more and more often. What is wrong with you? Marcus asked one day, after K-7 froze for the 3rd time that morning. Running diagnostics, K-7 said. Nothing is wrong. Marcus did not believe that, but he had no way to check. The robot systems were too old and too complex for him to understand. Then there were the coordinates. One night, Marcus woke up suddenly. He was not sure why. The ship was quiet, except for the soft hum of the life support system. He climbed out of his bunk and walked through the dark corridor toward the bridge. K-7 was standing at the viewport, staring out at the stars. The robot was whispering something so quiet that Marcus could barely hear. He moved closer and listened. Numbers. K7 was whispering numbers. A long sequence of coordinates, repeated over and over like a prayer. K7, Marcus said. What are you doing? The robot turned slowly. Its optical sensor brightened as it focused on Marcus. I am remembering, K7 said. Remembering what? A long pause. The robot's gears clicked softly inside its body. I cannot tell you. Not yet. Marcus felt frustration build in his chest. You keep saying that. Not yet. When will you tell me? What are you hiding? K7 did not answer. It simply turned back to the viewport and continued staring at the stars. Marcus ran diagnostic scans on the robot the next day. He used every tool he had, checking K7's memory banks and processing units. But he found nothing unusual. Whatever secrets K7 held were buried deep inside, protected by systems Marcus could not access. The drifter was finally ready to fly. Marcus took small jobs around the station, carrying cargo from one place to another. The work did not pay much, but it was enough to buy food and fuel. More importantly, it gave Marcus a chance to test the ship. The engines ran smoothly now. The navigation computer worked perfectly. The drifter was old, but it was strong. K-7 came along on every trip. The robot sat in the co-pilot seat, monitoring systems and offering advice. Marcus had to admit that having K7 around made him feel less alone. Space was big and empty, and the silence could drive a person crazy. At least with K7 there was someone to talk to. But K7 kept pushing Marcus to go further. There is a region of space called the Hollow Expanse, K7 said one day. It is 3 months away from here. No human ships travel there. Marcus looked up from his meal. Why would I want to go to a place like that? Because that is where the truth waits. What truth? You keep talking about secrets and truth, but you never explain anything. K7's optical sensor flickered. Your uncle spent 40 years searching for answers. He found them, but he was afraid to act on what he learned. He made me promise to protect that knowledge until a worthy heir could be found. And you think I am worthy? I have watched you for 2 months. You work hard. You do not give up. You ask questions and seek understanding. These are good qualities. Marcus shook his head. That does not answer my question. What is in the Hollow Expanse? What did my uncle find? K-7 stood up from the co-pilot seat. Its old joints creaked with the movement. I will show you soon, the robot said. But first, you must decide if you truly want to know. Some truths change everything. Once you learn them, you cannot go back to the way things were before. Marcus thought about his life on Earth, the small apartment, the factory job, the loneliness that followed him everywhere. He had nothing to go back to. Whatever waited in the Hollow Expanse, it had to be better than the emptiness he had left behind. I want to know, Marcus said. I want to understand why my uncle spent his whole life out here. I want to know what was worth hiding for 40 years. K7's optical sensor brightened. Something in its voice sounded almost warm. Then prepare the ship. We leave in 3 days. Marcus spent those 3 days gathering supplies. He bought extra food, water, and fuel. He checked every system twice. He studied maps of the space between Kepler Station and the Hollow Expanse. The journey would be long and dangerous. There were pirates in some sectors, radiation storms in others. Many ships had disappeared along that route and never returned, but Marcus was not afraid. He had spent his whole life being careful, playing it safe, and following rules. Where had that gotten him? Nowhere. He was 35 years old, with nothing to show for it, except calluses on his hands and an empty bank account. This was his chance to be something more. On the morning of departure, Marcus sat in the captain's chair and looked at K7. "Are you ready?" he asked. "I have been ready for 40 years, K7 replied. Marcus smiled. He pushed the throttle forward and the drifter lifted away from Kepler Station. The ugly metal spider grew smaller and smaller in the viewport until it was just a speck of light among the stars. Ahead of them lay 3 months of empty space. Ahead of them lay danger and uncertainty. Ahead of them lay the hollow expanse and whatever truth waited there. Marcus did not know what he would find. But for the first time in his life, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The stars called to him, and he was finally answering. The drifter flew on, carrying its crew of 2 toward destiny. The drifter had survived 2 pirate attacks and a radiation storm that nearly fried the navigation computer. Marcus had not slept properly in days. His food supplies were running lower than expected, and K7 still refused to explain what they were looking for. Marcus cornered the robot in the cargo bay. He stood between K7 and the door, blocking any escape. "No more games," Marcus said. His voice was tired but firm. "You tell me everything right now, or I turn this ship around." K7's optical sensor flickered. "We are too far to turn back. Your fuel would not last. Then I will dump you out the airlock and figure things out myself." Marcus did not mean it. He would never actually harm K7, but he needed the robot to understand how serious he was. K7 stood motionless for a long moment. The silence in the cargo bay felt heavy, like the air before a storm. Then, slowly, a panel on the robot's chest slid open. Marcus had examined K7 many times during the repairs, but he had never noticed this compartment. It was hidden behind layers of armor plating, invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. Inside the compartment was a crystal. It was about the size of Marcus's fist, shaped like a teardrop, and glowing with soft blue light. The glow pulsed gently, like a heartbeat. "What is that?" Marcus asked. "This is what your uncle found," K7 said. "This is what I have protected for 40 years. K7 carefully removed the crystal and held it out toward Marcus. The blue light reflected off the metal walls of the cargo bay, creating dancing shadows. "It is a data core," K7 explained, "but not like any technology humans have built. This core contains a star map. The map shows the location of the First Fleet." Marcus felt his legs go weak. He reached out and grabbed a nearby crate to steady himself. The First Fleet. Every human child learned about the First Fleet in school. 500 years ago, when Earth was dying from war and pollution, humanity built a massive fleet of colony ships. These ships carried 10 million people toward the center of the galaxy, searching for new worlds to call home. They were the best and brightest of humanity. Scientists, engineers, doctors, artists, farmers. They carried the hope of the entire species. And then they disappeared. No signals. No messages. No trace. The First Fleet simply vanished, and no one ever found out what happened to them. Some people believe they died in space, killed by radiation or starvation or accident. Others believe they found a new home and chose to hide from the rest of humanity. There were 1,000 theories, but no proof. Until now. "The First Fleet is real?" Marcus asked. His voice came out as a whisper. "They are real," K7 confirmed. "They survived. They found worlds beyond our reach. They built a civilization more advanced than anything in the outer colonies. Why did they not come back? Why did they not tell us?" K7's optical sensor dimmed slightly. "Because they were waiting." "Waiting for what?" "For humanity to prove itself worthy." Marcus shook his head. He did not understand. Worthy of what? K7 set the crystal down on a crate and turned to face Marcus fully. When it spoke again, its voice was different, slower, more careful, like it was choosing each word with great precision. When the first fleet left Earth, humanity was destroying itself. Wars, hatred, greed. The people who built the fleet believed that humanity had potential, but they also knew that potential could lead to destruction. They decided to wait and watch. If humanity matured, if the outer colonies learned to work together instead of fighting, then the first fleet would return and share everything they had learned. And if humanity did not mature, then the first fleet would remain hidden forever. They would let the outer colonies continue alone, for better or worse. Marcus looked at the glowing crystal. Such a small thing to hold such an enormous secret. How did my uncle find this? He was a salvage worker, like many on Kepler Station. 40 years ago, he found a piece of wreckage floating in deep space. It was old, very old, but the technology was unlike anything he had seen before. Inside the wreckage, he found this crystal and a message. What did the message say? K7's optical sensor flickered. It said that humanity had one chance. If someone from the outer colonies could reach the coordinates in the star map, if they came seeking unity rather than power, then the first fleet would reveal itself. But if they came seeking weapons or conquest, they would find nothing. Marcus understood now. His uncle had found the most important discovery in human history. But David was just one man. He had no power, no influence, no way to make the outer colonies work together. He had spent 40 years trying to find someone who could carry this burden, and he had chosen Marcus. Why me? Marcus asked. I am nobody. I was a factory worker on Earth. I have no special skills, no connections, no money. That is exactly why, K7 said. Your uncle watched the powerful people of the outer colonies. He watched politicians and generals and corporate leaders. He saw greed in their eyes. He saw ambition that cared nothing for unity. He needed someone different. Someone who wanted answers, not power. Someone who would put humanity first. And you think I am that person? I have watched you for months. You work hard without complaint. You treat me with respect, even though I am just a machine. You ask questions because you want to understand, not because you want to control. These qualities are rare. Marcus sat down on a crate. His mind was spinning with everything he had learned. The first fleet was real. They had technology beyond imagination. And they were waiting for humanity to prove itself. What happens when we reach the coordinates? He asked. I do not know, K7 admitted. Your uncle never made the journey. He was afraid of what he would find. He was afraid of failing. But you want me to try? I believe you will succeed where he could not. But the choice is yours. I will not force you. Marcus looked at the crystal, still glowing softly on the crate. He thought about all the people in the outer colonies, struggling to survive, fighting wars over resources, never knowing that their ancestors were watching from afar. He thought about what it would mean to bring them together. To give humanity a second chance, it was terrifying. It was impossible. It was the most important thing anyone had ever asked him to do. Marcus stood up and picked up the crystal. The blue light was warm against his palm. Show me the coordinates, he said. We are going to finish what my uncle started. K-7's optical sensor brightened. If a robot could smile, Marcus thought it would be smiling now. Setting course, K7 said. We will arrive in 6 weeks. Marcus carried the crystal to the bridge and placed it carefully on the console. Outside the viewport, the stars burned like distant candles. Somewhere out there, the first fleet was waiting, and Marcus Cole was coming to meet them. For 3 weeks, the drifter flew through empty space without passing a single star. No planets, no stations, no other ships. Just darkness stretching in every direction. So complete that Marcus sometimes forgot which way was up and which way was down. The crystal sat on the bridge console, glowing softly, reminding Marcus why they were here. He looked at it every morning when he woke up and every night before he slept. It gave him strength when the loneliness became too heavy. K-7 never seemed bothered by the emptiness. The robot monitored the ship's systems, made repairs when needed, and kept Marcus company during the long hours. They talked about many things. K-7 told stories about Uncle David, about the jobs they had done together and the places they had visited. Marcus shared memories of his life on Earth, though those memories felt distant now, like they belonged to someone else. One night, Marcus asked the question that had been bothering him for weeks. K-7, how did you know my uncle was special? How did you know he would keep the secret safe? The robot's optical sensor flickered thoughtfully. I did not know at first. When your uncle found the crystal, I was damaged. My memory banks were corrupted. I could not remember my original programming or my purpose. Your uncle repaired me. He spent months restoring my systems, asking nothing in return. That kindness told me everything I needed to know about his character. And when he decided not to make the journey himself, I was disappointed, K-7 admitted. But I understood. Your uncle was old by then, and tired. He had spent decades searching for someone who could share this burden with him. He never found anyone he trusted. In the end, he decided to leave the choice to fate. He wrote his will, naming you as his heir, and he asked me to judge whether you were worthy. What if I had not been worthy? Then I would have destroyed the crystal and let the secret die with me. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Such a huge decision, resting on the judgment of one old robot. But looking at K-7, Marcus understood why his uncle had trusted the machine. There was something honest in K-7's voice, something real despite the mechanical body. The robot had spent 40 years keeping a promise. That kind of loyalty was rare among humans, let alone machines. The journey grew more dangerous as they pushed deeper into the hollow expanse. First came the gravity wells. These were invisible traps scattered through space, places where gravity bent and twisted in unnatural ways. The drifter sensors could barely detect them. More than once, K-7 had to take emergency control of the ship to steer them away from danger. Then came the radiation clouds. These glowing walls of energy stretched across their path like curtains of poison. The ship's shields held, but just barely. Marcus watched the power readings drop with each cloud they crossed, knowing that if they hit too many, they would be left defenseless. Finally came the worst challenge of all. The navigation computer stopped working. They were still 2 weeks from the coordinates when the system crashed. Marcus spent 3 days trying to repair it, but the damage was too severe. Without navigation, they were flying blind through the most dangerous region of space known to humanity. We have to turn back, Marcus said. He was sitting on the floor of the engineering bay, surrounded by broken computer parts. His hands were shaking from exhaustion. We cannot find the coordinates without navigation. K-7 stood over him, silent for a moment. Then the robot knelt down, bringing its optical sensor level with Marcus's eyes. We do not need the computer, K-7 said. I know the way. What do you mean? Your uncle traveled this route once before. He went further than anyone else in the outer colonies. He mapped every gravity well, every radiation cloud, every safe path through the darkness. When he turned back, he uploaded all that data into my memory banks. Marcus stared at the robot. You have been carrying a map this whole time. Yes. Why did you not tell me sooner? K-7's optical sensor dimmed slightly. Because I wanted you to struggle. I wanted to see how you handle difficulty. Anyone can succeed when things are easy. True character reveals itself when things are hard. Marcus should have been angry. K-7 had let him suffer for 3 days, worrying that their mission was finished. But looking at the robot's flickering eye, Marcus felt something else. Understanding. K-7 was still testing him. still making sure he was worthy. And he had passed. "Guide us," Marcus said. "Take us to the coordinates." KD7 stood and walked toward the bridge. Marcus followed, leaving the broken computer parts behind. They did not need human technology anymore. They had something better. They had 40 years of accumulated knowledge, stored in the memory banks of an ancient robot. The final 2 weeks passed slowly. K7 guided the ship through dangers that Marcus could barely see, adjusting course constantly to avoid invisible threats. The robot did not sleep, did not rest, did not make mistakes. It was like watching a master artist at work that Marcus spent his time preparing. He cleaned himself up, trimming his beard and washing his clothes. He organized the ship, making everything neat and orderly. He practiced what he would say when they arrived, though he knew no preparation could truly ready him for what was coming. On the last night before arrival, Marcus sat on the bridge and watched the stars. The darkness of the hollow expanse was finally giving way to light. Distant suns appeared in the viewport, more of them with each passing hour. They were approaching the heart of the galaxy. "K7, Marcus said. "What do you think we will find tomorrow?" The robot stood beside him, its optical sensor focused on the stars ahead. "I do not know," K7 said. "Your uncle never made it this far. Everything beyond this point is unknown. Are you afraid?" A pause. Then, quietly, "I do not experience fear the way humans do. But I understand the importance of tomorrow. The fate of humanity may depend on what happens. That knowledge creates something like fear inside my circuits." Marcus nodded. He felt the same way. Tomorrow, everything would change. Either they would succeed and bring humanity together, or they would fail, and the First Fleet would remain hidden forever. "Whatever happens," Marcus said, "I am glad you are here with me." K-7's optical sensor brightened. "I am glad as well, Marcus Cole. You have proven yourself worthy 100 times over. Your uncle would be proud." Marcus smiled. Coming from K7, those words meant more than any praise he had ever received. The drifter flew on through the night, carrying its crew of 2 toward the unknown. Tomorrow, they would reach the coordinates. Tomorrow, they would finally learn the truth. Tomorrow, humanity's fate would be decided. Marcus stood on the bridge, staring at the viewport in disbelief. They had traveled for 3 months, risked their lives countless times, and pushed through the most dangerous region of the galaxy. And there was nothing here. Just stars and darkness, the same as everywhere else. "K7, Marcus said, his voice hollow. "Are you sure these are the right coordinates?" "I am certain," the robot replied. "This is the exact location marked on the crystal." Marcus felt his hope crumbling. Had it all been for nothing? Had his uncle been wrong? Maybe the First Fleet was just a legend after all. A fairy tale that people told themselves to feel better about humanity's failures. Then K7 picked up the crystal and held it toward the viewport. "There is one more step," the robot said. "The crystal must send a signal. A call that only the First Fleet can hear." "Do it," Marcus said. K-7 pressed the crystal against the sensor panel on the console. The blue glow intensified, growing brighter and brighter until Marcus had to shield his eyes. A pulse of energy shot out from the crystal, invisible but powerful, spreading through space like a ripple in a pond. Then they waited. Minutes passed. Nothing happened. Marcus began pacing the bridge, running his hands through his hair. Maybe the signal had not worked. Maybe the First Fleet had moved to a different location. Maybe they had decided that humanity was not worthy after all. "Marcus," K7 said suddenly. "Look." Marcus turned to the viewport, and his breath caught in his throat. The stars were moving. Not the stars themselves, but something in front of them. Massive shapes were appearing out of nowhere, blocking the starlight as they materialized. Ships. Hundreds of ships. Thousands of ships. They emerged from hidden places in space, from dimensions that human science could not explain, pouring into reality like water through a broken dam. The ships were beautiful. Their hulls gleamed with silver and gold, covered in patterns that seemed to shift and change as Marcus watched. They were bigger than any vessels the outer colonies had ever built, some of them stretching for kilometers. And they were arranged in perfect formation, a fleet that spoke of discipline and power beyond imagination. The first fleet had come. A transmission crackled through the drifter's speakers. The voice was human, clear and warm, speaking words that made Marcus's heart pound. Descendant vessel, you have proven the bloodline's worth. We are the first fleet. We are your ancestors. And we have been waiting for you. Marcus could not speak. Tears were streaming down his face, and he did not bother to wipe them away. 500 years of mystery, of wondering what had happened to humanity's greatest pioneers, and here was the answer. They had survived. They had thrived. They had been watching and waiting for someone to find them. I am Marcus Cole, he finally managed to say. I came seeking answers. I came seeking unity for humanity. A pause. Then the voice spoke again. We know why you came, Marcus Cole. We have watched your journey. We have seen your struggles and your choices. You passed every test we could devise. You proved that humanity is capable of growth, of change, of putting the greater good above personal gain. A small shuttle detached from the nearest ship and flew toward the drifter. Marcus watched it approach, his hands trembling. Within minutes, the shuttle had docked with his cargo bay. K-7 led him down to meet the visitors. The shuttle's door opened, and a woman stepped out. She looked about 60 years old, with silver hair and kind eyes. She wore a simple uniform, but she carried herself like a queen. Behind her came two younger people, a man and a woman, both watching Marcus with curious expressions. I am Grace, the older woman said. I command this fleet, as my family has commanded it for 5 generations. Welcome, Marcus Cole. Welcome to your inheritance. My inheritance? Grace smiled. When the first fleet left Earth, we did not abandon humanity. We became its guardians. For 500 years, we have watched over the outer colonies, protecting them from threats they never knew existed. We have waited for the day when someone would come to us, someone worthy of learning the truth. She gestured at the fleet visible through the cargo bay window. All of this belongs to humanity. The technology, the knowledge, the resources. We develop cures for every disease. We learned to bend space and time. We built worlds where no world existed before. And we kept it all safe, waiting for this moment. Marcus felt overwhelmed. It was too much to process. Why did you not just return? Why make us prove ourselves? Because power corrupts, Grace said simply. When the first fleet left Earth, humanity was tearing itself apart. If we had returned too soon, bringing all this technology, we would have made things worse. The outer colonies would have fought wars for control of our gifts. Millions would have died. We needed to wait until humanity was ready. Are we ready now? Grace studied him carefully. That depends on you, Marcus Cole. You have proven yourself worthy. But you are just one man. The question is whether the rest of humanity will follow your example. Marcus thought about the outer colonies. The miners on Kepler Station, working themselves to death for small wages. The factory workers on Earth, living in tiny apartments and dreaming of something better. The soldiers fighting wars over resources that the first fleet could provide freely. So many people suffering, so many problems that could be solved if humanity learned to work together. I cannot promise that everyone will change overnight, Marcus said. But I can promise to try. I will spend the rest of my life teaching people what I learned on this journey. that cooperation is better than conflict, that unity is better than division, that we are all one species, one family, one humanity. Grace nodded slowly. That is all we ask. One person at a time, one day at a time, until the whole of humanity awakens to its true potential. She reached out and took Marcus's hand. Her grip was warm and firm. The First Fleet will return with you to the outer colonies. We will share our technology and our knowledge. We will help heal the wounds of 5 centuries. But we will not rule. We will not control. We will only guide and let humanity find its own way forward. Marcus looked at K7, standing silently in the corner of the cargo bay. The old robot's optical sensor was glowing brighter than Marcus had ever seen it. K7, Marcus said. You did it. You kept your promise for 40 years, and now humanity will finally be reunited. The robot's voice crackled with something that sounded almost like emotion. I am glad, Marcus Cole. Your uncle would be proud. I am proud. Marcus smiled. He thought about the long journey that had brought him here. The small apartment on Earth. The inheritance he never expected. The rusty ship and the ancient robot. The secrets and the dangers and the endless darkness of the hollow expanse. Every step had led to this moment. He turned to Grace and the representatives of the First Fleet behind them. Through the cargo bay window, thousands of ships waited to begin the journey home. Let us go, Marcus said. Humanity has been waiting long enough. The First Fleet formed around the drifter, and together they turned toward the outer colonies. Toward Earth. Toward a future where humanity would finally claim its place among the stars. Marcus Cole, the factory worker from Earth, had changed the course of history. And beside him, K7 stood watch, as faithful as ever, ready for whatever came next. The stars had always belonged to humanity. Now, at last, they were going to claim them.